The Northeast Vienna Citizens Association and the Vienna Business Association want to welcome you to the 2020 Meet the Candidates for the Vienna Town Council Forum. Although originally scheduled to take place at the Vienna Community Center, we are recording this forum instead. This recording is taking place on April 2nd, 2020. I'm Doug Francis, First Vice President of NEVCA and the moderator of this forum. NEVCA retains the copyright to this content, and this content may only be used with written permission from the President of NEVCA. For permission, please email us at info@nevca.org. Before we begin, Fairfax County General Registrar and Director of Elections, Gary Scott, has asked us to read the following. The current health crisis is having a significant impact on the preparations for and the conduct of voting in the May 5th Vienna town elections. Voters and officers of election have valid concerns with respect to their exposure to COVID-19. However, at this time, the Vienna polling place will be open on election day. We'll take precautions to reduce the exposure of all involved by sanitizing ballot marking pens, wiping down the surfaces of tables and ballot marking booths, limiting the number of voters in the polling area, and enforcing social distancing to ensure the exposure to the virus is as low as we can make it. We will also be reducing staff in the polling place to the lowest possible level while ensuring the continuation of the voting process. This will slow the process, and voters may end up standing in lines to gain access to the polling place. As an alternative, we encourage voters to go to our website, www.fairfaxcounty.gov/elections, and review the process for requesting and casting an absentee ballot by mail. As Virginia does still require for voters to provide a reason for casting an absentee ballot, anyone can use the reason code 2A. Applications for absentee ballots can be submitted online, faxed, or scanned and submitted as an email attachment to absenteeballot@fairfaxcounty.gov. Ballots will be mailed the next business day after the application is processed, and the marked ballots will be returned to the Office of Elections no later than 7 p.m. on May 5th, 2020. The deadline to request an absentee ballot by mail is 5 p.m. April 28th, 2020. If you choose to exercise this option, you should request your ballot as early as possible to ensure the postal system has ample time to deliver your ballot and for you to return it to the Office of Elections. In-person absentee voting is also available at the Fairfax County Government Center Monday through Friday from 8 to 4:30. Our office will also be open 9 to 5 Saturday, May 2nd for in-person absentee voting. For this election, all in-person absentee voting will be done curbside, and applications and ballots will be brought out to your car. This is a slow process, so if you choose this option, expect some delays. I also want to add, if you go to their website, they do have a deadline of April 13th, so I do recommend, this is being recorded and shown numerous times, that you meet that April 13th deadline. Please go to their website. To move on with our forum, I do need to read the forum rules. There are prohibited items that I've reviewed with our participants. They include inflammatory or hateful comments related to race, gender, sexual orientation, religion, or age, personal attacks, name-calling or belittling another member, use of profanity at any time, inappropriate sexual references or terminology, questioning the moderator, that's me, or administrator in a debate topic. Please keep the following in mind. There are no winners. Winners will be determined at the polls on May 5th. Twisting people's words or quoting them out of context is misleading and not constructive. Avoid blanket statements that focus on a broad topic and not specific subject at hand. Please follow the rules. Regarding credibility, establishing credibility takes time. There is, however, a lot you can do to speed the process along. Cite your sources and be prepared to back up your argument. Avoid use of unsupported blanket statements, and you can disagree without being disagreeable. We're going to start off our forum where each of us are actually going to have, or each of you will have 2 minutes. We did a drawing out of the hat and have assigned a rotating list here of people to start off. We're going to start off with Andrea Dahl. Andrea, you can start now.
Thank you, Doug. Hello, everybody. My name is Andrea Dahl, and I'm running for town council because I believe that I can make a positive impact. Let me tell you a little bit about myself. As a child, I grew up in Arlington Heights, Illinois, Rye, New Hampshire, and Bethesda, Maryland. I earned my undergraduate degree in business from the University of Maryland, majoring in logistics, transportation, and supply chain management. While working full-time, I graduated with honors from American University, earning my MBA with a double major in management and marketing IT. When I first moved to Vienna in 1998, I was a single professional working 60 hours a week, traveling all over the country as a corporate trainer for a Fortune 10 company. I spent 18 months house hunting, getting to know this area, but I kept returning to the town of Vienna for its small town feel and sense of community. Fast forward to today. I'm still living in the same home in Vienna, only now I'm happily married with a husband of 14 years and 2 healthy children who attend Wolf Trap Elementary School. I'm still working as hard as I ever did, but now instead of negotiating sourcing contracts or setting up national recycling programs, I'm a full-time mom, teen parent, scout leader, cookie manager, fundraising specialist, school, church, and community volunteer. My family and I have fallen in love with this town and all that it has to offer. In fact, my husband commutes 2+ hours each day to his job in Baltimore because we love Vienna and all the wonderful things unique to the town. In everything I do, I strive to keep that small town feel and work to build a strong sense of community. I created a Veterans Day program at Wolf Trap to recognize and honor our local veterans. I work closely with Wolf Trap's Safe Routes to School team to promote Walking Wednesday, make our schools safer, and to strengthen our school community. Whether in the corporate world or in my volunteer life, I proactively research how things are done and then move forward with a plan to do it better for less money while having some fun along the way. As a resident of Northeast Vienna for 22 years and a mom who's first to volunteer for everything, I'd be honored if you'd vote for me.
Thank you, Andrea. Okay, we're done. Okay, our next candidate is David Patariu. I'm sorry, David, every time I say your name, and here I've got the timer going crazy on me. Good Lord. Okay, David, why don't you go?
Thanks, Doug. My name is David Patariu. I'm a practicing attorney, a Vienna dad with 3 young children, a parishioner at Our Lady of Good Counsel Church, a planning commissioner with the town of Vienna, and a zealous advocate for residents. My wife and I chose to move to Vienna because of its small town feel and its vibrant community. Among the candidates, I have the best sense of what other areas of Northern Virginia currently do and do not offer, because our family recently went through that decision-making process and we chose Vienna. After we moved to Vienna, we were surprised by the worsening cut-through traffic on Niblick and Hine and all over town. It is not safe for our children to play or ride their bikes or scooters in front of our homes, and it's not even safe for adults. I was also shocked to learn about the max zoning and its giant buildings, and now the planned zoning code rewrite for residential and commercial that threatens to discard what makes Vienna special. I am running for town council so that we don't discard what makes Vienna special on some fad of the day. On the town's planning commission, I asked a tough question for residents. When residents had concerns about the planned use of Buell Road Park as a temporary police station parking lot, I asked what was the plan to preserve trees and restore this park. When staff claimed that Wade Hampton could not be closed to cut through traffic, despite all of the construction in that part of town, I asked why not. When residents had questions about the planned residential and commercial zoning rewrite, I asked staff about this undisclosed process. During these unprecedented times created by the pandemic, we need to work together as a group. Working as a group is the best way for our small town to beat the pandemic, and it's the best way to help Vienna move ahead in these difficult times. Thank you.
That's great. Okay, C5, we've got Ed Summers is going to be talking next. Ed, you're on.
Thank you, Doug, and thank you to NEVCA and the Vienna Business Association for hosting this discussion. I'm not sure that any of us, when deciding to run for town council, fully appreciated the health and economic impact of the coronavirus. People are suffering the loss of life, jobs, and business income, and much more. This is taking a physical and a mental toll on so many. I don't say these things to diminish the importance of our election for mayor and town council, just the opposite. The impacts of this pandemic will have on our local economy and our town budget could be felt long after the public health emergency passes. I got into this race because I truly love the town and I wanted to give back. I believe that my experience as chair of our Transportation Safety Commission had given me a good feeling for the priorities of Vienna residents and the level of engagement and transparency they expect from their government. But over the past several months, I've come to believe that my 30 years as a federal advocate for local elected leaders makes me a unique candidate and could be of service to Vienna in the uncertain times ahead. Working for the U.S. Conference of Mayors, I've come to serve some of the country's most dedicated, visionary, and compassionate officials from communities of all sizes, and I've learned best practices that can be applied in Vienna. I, like all of you, care about the practical issues of traffic, pedestrian safety, and maintaining a safe city. And I look forward to our discussion on these priorities. But having worked with so many great local officials, I found that it's often how they think about problems, listen to residents, and build consensus among their colleagues that ends up being the definition of their success. So tonight, I hope you'll listen to how I think about things as you consider giving me your vote. Thank you.
It's great. Thank you. Ray, you're up next. You're on.
Okay. My name is Ray Brill. I'm pleased to be here, and I want to say thank you, Doug, and to NEVCA and the Vienna Business Association for putting on this debate and for all the candidates participating. I have a lifetime of service. I have been fortunate to lead 15 organizations, and I would like to bring my experience and what I have learned to help Vienna in these difficult times. I reflect back when I was in the military as an Air Force pilot. I was asked to be on the staff of Chappie James to lead the Directorate of Planning and Analysis. Chappie James had one way of doing things. He said, when you're asked to do something, don't wait, do it now and do it right. Chappie James became the first African-American four-star general in the Air Force, a dynamic leader. When I was working with Congress, I had the opportunity to work with Gore. We were working on the Small Business Development. We were working with the House Science and Technology Committee, and it was going down to certain defeat because groups were against it. He looked at me and said, how can we save this bill? I said, put a 5-year sunset provision. He said, that's it. It was put in a bill, and the bill passed. This is considered the second most important bill outside the GI Bill in terms of its impact on the country. 700 new companies formed, 70,000 patents, and billions of dollars of products were developed. This is what I would like to bring, the practical, creative approach to the town of Vienna. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you, Ray. Next up, we've got Chuck Anderson. Chuck?
Thanks, Doug, and thanks, NEVCA and the Vienna Business Association. This is clearly an unprecedented election. We don't really even know how we're going to vote. And regular campaign events, including door knocking, are out the window. And the number of candidates really is unprecedented too, including 4 that are openly running as a slate and openly trying to gain control of the council. An unprecedented election calls for an unusual opening statement. So I'm not going to talk about myself at all. Instead, I'm going to discuss the 4 personal qualities that I think are important in this election. They are experience, judgment, compassion, and commitment. First, experience. In the next few months, the town of Vienna will face enormous fiscal challenges, responding to requests for tax relief from businesses and residents while struggling to maintain financial soundness. It's not the time for political experimentation. We need people who have spent time in town hall. We need people who are comfortable with budgets, balance sheets, and spreadsheets. Second, judgment. Among the candidates, who has challenged excessive development projects thoughtfully, organizing their neighbors, searching the law, and finding outside experts to support their positions? You, the voter, may also want to consider the recent actions of some candidates. Who has shown sound, careful judgment on how to campaign in the current environment? Third, compassion will be needed in spades. We all need to remember that the squeakiest wheel is not always the neediest wheel. We need to attend to those in Vienna who are suffering the most, be they residents or businesses. Finally, you, the voter, should be looking for signs of commitment. Which candidate has the time to devote to the upcoming heavy workload? Has the candidate shown a long-term commitment to issues like development and zoning?
Thank you, Chuck.
And I will stop there.
Okay. Next up is Roy Baldwin. Roy, you're on.
Thank you. Thank you, Doug, and thank you, NEVCA, and thank you, VBA. And no, I am not coming to you from the Canadian Rockies. This is just the wallpaper in my room. Back in 1980, when my wife Sharon and I were looking around for a place to settle, we chose Vienna. And it was because it was a nice little town, nothing more than that. And 40 years later, we've grown to love it. And frankly, we want the same for you, and I am willing to fight for that. Of course, Vienna in recent years has been the subject of tremendous development pressures, especially along Maple Avenue. You've made it clear that you don't want our little town to turn into a big town, and I'm with you on that. But before we get to that, of course, the new town council will have a lot to say about that. But before we get to all of that, we have to get through the next 2 or 3 months. The new town council members, when they take their seats in June, will face the most significant challenges to this little town since 1861. We have to get to the other side, and we have to prepare for that, and we have to provide for all of our members of our town and our larger community. We have to work as a team. We have to work together as a team and not as a slate or separate set of individuals. I say that because 3 of the candidates on this forum have said that they want to join forces together with one of the town mayoral candidates to form a slate to take over the town council. I hope that this makes you as nervous as it does me. And Doug, I hope that you will have some questions for them, such as, why do you want to take over Vienna? And what do you intend to do if you're successful? For my part, I want to be part of a team that overcomes challenges. And to that end, I can bring some significant experience.
Thank you, Roy.
All right, and I'll tell you about that later.
Okay. And then we've got Chris. Chris, you're on.
Thanks, Doug. Thanks, NEVCA. Thanks, VBA, for putting this on. This is certainly unprecedented times. I did not anticipate speaking with you over webcam. I was really looking forward to meeting people in person, putting names with faces, but we are where we are, and I appreciate all the effort that's gone into this. A little bit about me. I was born and raised in Lynchburg, Virginia. I graduated James Madison University in '99, and I moved to Vienna in 2004, where I met my wife, Callie, and we currently have 2 boys, 10 and 6, that attend Vienna Elementary School. One of the real reasons why I'm running for town council is I've met with friends and neighbors at restaurants over the years. The one consistent theme I hear is that the Vienna Town Council needs a fresh perspective. We need new blood. Choose your cliche. I hear it all the time. After years of encouragement, I decided that I provide that fresh perspective to the town council. In short, I think that the town council needs to take on a can-do attitude. And certainly with coronavirus and all that it's brought with it, that can-do attitude needs to be brought to the town of Vienna to get us to the other side of this as safely and quickly as possible. One potential avenue for that is coordinating with other towns locally, other jurisdictions locally. Despite the great people that the town of Vienna has, Falls Church, Fairfax City, Fairfax County, Arlington, they all are coming up with good ideas, but we don't seem to be coordinating or communicating with them to understand how best and present all the options to overcome some of the challenges the town has. As a town council member, that will be my goal, is to leverage all resources to understand how best to move Vienna forward. Thanks.
That's great, Chris. Thank you. We're now going to move into the question and answer period. So the candidates will be responding to a total of 7 questions, and then we're going to go through a rotation where the candidates, one of them will have the opportunity at the end to add additional commentary or a rebuttal at that point in time, and that would be an additional minute. So question number 1, we actually have Chris Wright. You're still up, and I'm going to read through. These were selected by the Vienna Business Association as well as NEVCA members. They were submitted by the public through an email address solicitation put out on various websites, including Facebook. So our first question this evening, if you want to jot this down, feel free to do that. The COVID-19 pandemic has been incredibly devastating to all our local small businesses, including restaurants, retailers, and services. What's your immediate or long-term vision for aiding that recovery of our local small business and economy? Chris.
I think you just asked the $1 million question that everybody's asking right now. One thing we have to do is we have to promote and support our local businesses as much as humanly possible. A minute ago, I talked about a fresh perspective and having a can-do attitude towards the local businesses here. Just today, me and some other town council candidates and a mayoral candidate, we printed up banners encouraging our residents to frequent these local businesses, to support them because they're all going through hard times. I've had them reach out to me directly asking what can happen, what can we do? I think we need to get creative. I think we need to figure out how to prop up these businesses. But on a small scale level, the very least we can do is eat there, give them signage to help promote their businesses. But as an example of a can't-do attitude, one of those businesses, and I'll say it, it was Anita's today, they set up a drive-through for their patrons to come through and as safely as possible, order a burrito. And the owner of Anita's was told that he couldn't do it because he didn't have the permit to do it.
Okay.
His
Thank
head
you,
was
Chris.
exploding, so was mine. I think in
Chris,
time
we have 1 minute, so
about how we.
I appreciate it. It's now Roy. You're going to be up, and you're going to be answering the same question, please.
All right, fine. Well, first I would say I would echo what Mr. Wright said. Buy a lot of carryout. Sharon and I are trying to do that every night or every other night, and for lunch and so forth. These restaurants, they really do need our patronage, and the same thing goes for everybody else that is allowed to be open. For the larger picture, frankly, I hope that we're going to recognize the place, including Northern Virginia, in 3 months and 4 and 5 months. We're going to have unprecedented unemployment, economic stagnation. And I think Vienna is going to need some help. We're going to need friends in high places. That's where I think I can bring a lot to bear. I know our state, local, and national representatives. I have their cell phones, cell phone numbers for many of them. When I call, they answer.
Roy, thank you very much.
I have long-term relationships that can bring to bear for Vienna.
Okay, and so Chuck Anderson is up. You're the next one answering the question.
Thanks. This is a really complicated issue. We certainly need to work to help our small businesses. 30% of the town's operating budget comes from businesses, commercial and industrial businesses in Vienna. So there's a vital need for us to support those businesses for no other reason to keep the town's own operations going. A lot of those revenues coming from the different businesses include things like sales tax and the meals tax. It amounts to a lot of money, and that money is going to disappear. It's not that the town can really, exempt those taxes. They're just not going to be collected. We will have to think about ways of trying to defer the tax burden, the remaining tax burden on these businesses.
Thank you, Chuck. The next comment is going to come from Ray Brill. Ray?
Thank you, Doug. I've been CEO of 2 corporations, and I've met payroll. I know how difficult these times are for our local businesses. Therefore, I've started an initiative called savorvienna.com. You can go to it at www.savorvienna.com, which allows local residents to buy gift cards from their favorite restaurants and any amount they would like. The restaurants will hold it, and they won't use it until July 1, which gives the restaurants money now when they need it the most for payroll, and then after July 1, they can use it to buy a product. This is the kind of can-do creative approach that we need to try to meet the need in these very trying times.
Okay, thank you very much. Our next comment is actually going to come from Ed Summers. Ed, you're on.
Thanks, Doug. I think everybody's doing the right thing by trying to eat out as much as possible and support our local businesses. But I have to be honest, I don't think that's going to be enough. The fact is that the federal government has now enacted 3 major stimulus pieces of legislation that provide over $350 billion of funding targeted to small business. They're providing loans, they're providing loan forgiveness, they're providing cash grants to help businesses get through the months ahead, pay their overhead, pay their employees, so that they can still be standing when this crisis passes. I'd like to use my experience, my connections, my knowledge to help make sure that the businesses in Vienna know how to access these funds so that they can still be standing and still be operating when this pandemic passes.
That's great. Thank you very much. The next up is David. And David, you're on.
Well, the first step here is to make sure that our first responders and our police have the equipment that they need and that they have the safe procedures that are necessary to make sure that they can keep our businesses safe and our residents safe. So let's just talk about just basic things we can do to make sure that our community is safe through the pandemic and that it's safe for our staff to work and it's safe for our businesses to work as well, because our businesses rely on our first responders and our police. So that's one place we should start and focus on our town staff to make sure that they have what they need and they have the resources they need so that they can continue to provide quality information to our businesses and help them apply for some of the grants that the federal government is going to be making available in the next few months. We strongly support our small businesses, and we need to think about everything we can possibly do and cut whatever we can out of our budget to continue to assist our small businesses.
That's great. Thank you. Next comment from Andrea.
Thanks, Doug. For our economy, we need to help our small businesses by easing restrictions and relaxing tax collection. We need to get creative to promote their businesses. There are many residents in Vienna who want to help our small businesses and they can order food, but right now we could take that an extra step and we could actually promote a pay it forward initiative where we set up a GoFundMe type page or website that provides one-stop shopping to our residents to show them what restaurants and small businesses are open, what they have, and then encourage them to, if they're able, to donate money that could then be put towards meals to provide to first responders and those on the front lines in the Inova Fairfax Hospital and other places. I think we need to address what's happening today, and then as we learn from today, we'll go into the future with what we've learned.
Thanks, Andrea. On this one, our final word is actually going to be a 1-minute rebuttal, and that comes from Ray. Ray, what would you like to add?
What I'd like to add is that when we're dealing with situations like this, government has a role to play, but it always is slow in acting, and what we need is immediate action. And that's why, as I said, I'm a doer, not a talker. The Savor Vienna allows you to put money in the pockets of the restaurants, and it could be used for other businesses in town as well to meet the needs they have now. If they have to wait till the middle of April or maybe the end of April, they're suffering greatly. Maybe we'll even go out of business. We don't want that. We need to act now.
Okay, Ray, thank you very much. We'll move on to the second question. Roy, you're going to be up to actually answer this one when we get going. Let me read it to you. What is your position on the future use of the Beulah Road government facility, in the past known as Beulah Road Park, and used 6 months of the year for leaf operations?
The town should try our best to make this a park. There's, in some early maps, it even it appears marked as a park. I feel that, especially with open space being more and more just a precious commodity, we need to make better use of this space than we are now. And I'm almost positive that if we look really hard, we can find space in the town property yard to move that mulching facility. I want to see the people whose backyards back onto that operation to listen to barking dogs and laughing children, and not chipper shredders in the very near future.
Okay, thank you, Roy. Next up is actually going to be Chuck. And Chuck, you're on.
So when I was on the Planning Commission, I think it was pretty clear that I was a great supporter of parks. I helped work on the legislation that created the new park districts for Northfield. I worked on the Sarah Mercer Park. So I'm all in favor of parks, and I'm all in favor of the Beulah Road facility eventually being turned into the park. But I also have to be cognizant of the current financial and fiscal situation the town is facing, and the fact that converting that to a park immediately would require the leaf mulching operation to be moved elsewhere. And that's expensive. And right now, I'm not sure that the town has the funds to make that move. Eventually, I hope they will, but I would like to see basically that deferred for now.
Okay, thank you, Chuck. Ray, you're responding now. You're on.
I support green space. Now is not the time to be dealing with the closure of the Beulah Road mulching processing facility. As you know, Fairfax County and City of Falls Church have their own operations. If we were to truck the leaves there, we might be spending $300,000 or more a year to do it. So I think the questions we need to ask is, if we don't do it there, where in town could we do it? And if not, where are we going to find $300,000 in time? And also, how will the park be used? Those are questions that need to be asked, but we will not stop our leaf collection because it's so popular.
Okay, thank you, Ray. Next up is Ed Summers. Ed, you're on.
I think this is one of those topics that would be ripe for a community discussion. I'd like to see a hearing held on this so we could hear from residents across Vienna on what they'd like to see this property used as. I do have great concern as to where the leaves would go. What is the environmental impact if we have to truck leaves someplace else as opposed to processing them ourselves? So I think there's a multitude of issues, economic issues, environmental issues. And so I think this is one of those issues that would be a really good one for a community conversation, so we can hear from all parts of Vienna on how they'd like to see this property used.
Thank you. Okay, David, your comments on this.
Well, you know, I strongly support the restoration of Beulah Road Park, and I've been actively involved in this effort. You know, at our first town council meeting in July, as a council member, I will instruct the staff to find a new location for mulch processing and storage. We're going to eliminate this use of Beulah Road Park. It's an industrial use in a residential area, and we're going to get that stinky mulch yard out of there and help those residents that have been suffering with this for 20 or 30 years. We're going to amend the comprehensive plan and zone this parcel in 440 Beulah Road Park property as a parkland. And we're going to have a nature center like Hidden Oaks Nature Center, and work closely with area residents to restore Beulah Park. Now, of course, we have the pandemic to deal with, and that takes priority. But this certainly can also be a priority, and it could also help employ people who are going to need jobs and be looking for opportunities to work in our community. So this is a prime opportunity to do that and to help these long-suffering residents who have been dealing with this stinky mulch yard for 30 years.
Thank you. Andrea, let's get your comments on this, Andrea.
Okay, thank you. Having lived in Northeast Vienna for 22 years, each spring we look forward to our mulch delivery. I personally don't mind the mulch yard. I live close to it. It's currently a wildlife habitat. There are a dozen deer and a couple of fox dens that exist there. We regularly walk that area and know it well. However, I know that many of my neighbors who live nearby are unhappy with the smell and traffic in and out of the facility. As a mulch customer, I wouldn't want to eliminate mulch processing, but instead look at relocating it so that we don't have an industrial operation in the middle of a residential area. I want to restore the existing site to a natural park with big trees, trails, and native plants. As a Wolf Trap mom and scout leader, I know how difficult it is to reserve space for community activities, so I turned the adjacent home into a wildlife learning center to be used by scouts, school children, and surrounding neighborhoods for meetings and educational purposes. Back in 1934, when this land was deeded to the town, it was designated to be a park. Therefore, I would absolutely support and lead community conversation on the long-term use of the mulch yard, alias, or also known as the Beulah Road Park.
Thank you, Andrea. And now we're going to have Chris's comments on that.
Thanks, Doug. I think that it's, you know, as a town council member, in light of the budget crisis and the financial crunch that we're feeling right now, all projects have to be looked at as, do we have the budget? Do we have the funds for it? So that's a given. That's a baseline for everything we do. With regards to Beulah Road Park, I think the name says it all. It was meant to be a park. It should be a park. In the town of Vienna, with as many smart people as we have and as many different locations that we have, I don't think that it's too high of a hill to climb to figure out where to relocate that mulch yard so that our residents can continue to have their leaf collection and their mulching going forward. Thanks.
Okay. So now on this one, Ed, you actually have the final word. You've got a minute if you want to add something to the conversation.
You know, I think it's admirable, and I think we all would love to add another park to our wonderful town of Vienna. I do have questions as to where this facility would move, and I do have real concerns as to where the leaves would go. What is the environmental impact of having to truck leaves someplace else? So I think there are a multitude of issues on this that need to be discussed. And again, I think this is the kind of topic that deserves a transparent community conversation where all of Vienna can come together and talk about what they'd like to see this property used as and what they'd like to see happen to the leaves in our town.
Thank you. Okay, for our question number 3, the first one up will be Chuck Anderson. And Chuck, the question is, please state your position on the development of Maple Avenue.
That's a quick question. I think my position on the development of Maple Avenue is pretty clear. I've been an advocate for appropriately scaled development along Maple Avenue for at least 9 years now. When I was on the Planning Commission, In the 2013, 2014, I led the opposition to the passage of the Maple Avenue Commercial District, primarily on the basis that the appropriate studies on the limitations to growth via traffic, via infrastructure, via economic impact had not been addressed. I do support the redevelopment of Maple Avenue. I would make it a much smaller area, and I would certainly limit the height more than what we've seen today.
Thank you, Chuck. Okay, our next comment is going to come from Ray. Ray, you're on.
In terms of development of Maple Avenue, I would support 3-story limitation. I would support less dense development and also more green space. When I had an opportunity to work as mediator between the developer of 380 project and the surrounding homeowners, we came up with an idea of doing a terrace approach on the back part that faces the homeowners. This was not accepted by the developer at the time, but it was incorporated by Sunrise when they came forward with a project which has been approved. The point being is that we need a buffer between the development and the homeowners, and we need to have realistic development along Maple Avenue.
Thank you, Ray. Our next comment is going to come from Ed Summers.
I'd like to see less vacancies on 123. I'd like to see a vibrant downtown. I think things need to be scaled to fit Vienna. But we've been talking about these small businesses we're so concerned about. I think if we don't come together in some kind of a consensus approach of how we want our Main Street to look, and we don't support mixed use development, we don't have people living and walking and shopping along that corridor, the very small businesses we're all very concerned about, they could disappear because people aren't going to want to be in the properties that are currently there. So I think that we need to come together with a collective vision. I think it can be scaled to size, but I think it needs to have a new vibrancy, and it has to encourage mixed use development, and it has to be the kind of downtown that we've all moved to Vienna to be able to walk to shop in, and be a part of.
That's great. Thank you. David, your thoughts on this?
Oh, the MAC is a disaster, and we need to get rid of it. Additionally, the new planned rezoning the zoning code update of commercial and residential is just a way to make MAC by right, or people will attempt to do that. So that needs to be stopped in its tracks. Because of the pandemic, we're going to have to look at all of our businesses, and they don't need any other pressure of people thinking that there's going to be a MAC with bigger buildings and raised rents. We need to focus on keeping our small businesses healthy and help them survive this period. So we need to shelve the MAC. We need to shelve all this other stuff as well, this zoning update for now. And here's the other thing. We know Maple Avenue is at capacity. We knew that 10 years ago, and we ignored the fact, and we know it today. And after the pandemic is done, those 30,000 cars are going to come back. And so we need to look at any redevelopment with that lens and keep all that traffic that's going to be avoiding Maple out of our residential neighborhoods.
Thank you, David. Andrea, you've got the mic.
Thank you. Bigger is not necessarily better. I recognize that growth is inevitable, but think that we can do a better job managing it to preserve our small town feel. I support a maximum height of 3 stories and encourage more site modifications to repurpose existing buildings like the new Bear Branch Tavern. As a buffer between residential and commercial, we should replace the trees that we've been losing all over the town and promote larger setback and green space requirements. Any new growth needs to include town input and comprehensive planning that looks at the full impact on our roads and class sizes while protecting the overall quality of life of our residents. I support common sense redevelopment that encourages small mom and pop type businesses, which help differentiate Vienna from the rest of the Northern Virginia sprawl.
Thank you very much. Next comment comes from Chris.
Thanks, Doug. If I wanted to live in Falls Church or Tyson's Corner or anything similar to that, that's where I would live. I moved to Vienna and we stay in Vienna. We love Vienna because of that small town feel. I want to continue to promote that. I'll be the first to admit that I think that there are a lot of buildings up and down Maple Avenue that could use a facelift. I don't think we need very many mattress stores. So I want to encourage businesses like Bear Branch Tavern, which I think brought a lot of energy, vibrance to the town. I think we want to encourage that going forward. I'm the biggest Chick-fil-A fan out there. I love their sandwiches, but I don't think the new Chick-fil-A and the flagship car wash is the vision that most of the town of Vienna has for Maple Avenue. So that's my stance on where we should have the development.
And then our comment, it comes from Roy. Roy?
I certainly don't want buildings that are too tall or too closely packed together or too dense for our small town feel. It's clear that the Maple Avenue corridor ordinance allowed too great a density. And that's why there's a moratorium now on such developments. The new council is going to have a chance to redo the MAC with a lot of community input as well. I want to be part of that because the MAC at its core is an incentive program. It says to the owner of commercial property, we know that you could build a certain kind of commercial building, but if you will make it mixed use, if you will do some of the things we want you to do as a town that we feel are in our best interests, you could build a little denser, not a lot.
Thank you, Roy. And on this one, David, you actually have the final minute. Additional thoughts?
Certainly. I was talking about the impact of additional traffic on Maple Avenue and how it flows into our residential neighborhoods. And the problem with building 4, 5, 6-story buildings along Maple Avenue is that all that excess traffic that supposedly doesn't exist according to the Kimley Horn report is going to wind up in your residential neighborhoods and make your neighborhood less livable. So this has a direct impact. Everybody here likes, we all like new things or new buildings. 1 or 2-story buildings are fine, maybe even 3 stories, but we need to keep that 35-foot height limit that defines Vienna and has defined Vienna for a long time. And we also need to keep in mind that if we build these 5 or 6-story buildings or 4-story buildings, whatever they're going to be when they're done rewriting the commercial code, which is on the table, where are all the people, the residents that are living in there in these Maple Avenue condos? Where are they going to go to school? What is that? What is the impact on our schools? And has that been planned for? So as a council member, we're going to take care of that, and we're going to plan ahead.
Thank you, David. We're going to move on to our 4th question. We're going to start off with Ray Brill. You're going to be responding to this first, Ray. So question number 4, what changes do you think are critical in the rewriting of the Vienna zoning regulations?
In response to that question, there seems to be some variance between the zoning regulations and the land use plan. I think they need to be reconciled. Secondly, there seems to be difficulty for people to understand exactly what the zoning code says you can and cannot do. I would like to put it more in English so that the person who is applying for a zoning can understand it. And I believe that the rewrite is very important. I would not rewrite it all, but I would rewrite it to make sure that we have reasonable growth, limitations on the height, 3 stories, and less dense development with buffer for those homeowners who live nearby.
Thank you, Ray. Next is going to be Ed. Ed, you're up.
I attended the recent community discussion about whether or not lot coverage should be expanded or not. And I heard a lot of good discussion on both sides of the issue. People who felt like they wanted to develop on more, build a porch or use more of their property. People who have older homes who felt like they weren't being listened to. This is one where, again, I don't think the town has come to a consensus yet as to what they want to do. And I think the next council is going to have a lot more community engagement on this topic. I'm not clear what the future is on this, but I think it needs to have a balance to make sure that there is a transparency for both current homeowners and new homeowners so they understand what they're buying, what they have, what their rights are. And I think sometimes there's this sense that, the developers, they sometimes can get variances that current homeowners can't. I want there to be transparency, and I want there to be very, very clear rules for all of our residents.
Thank you, Ed. The next is going to be David. David, you're up.
So one of the first things we need to think about in this whole process is transparency. And, so far there's been minimal resident input into this RFP process and process to hire somebody for $250,000 to do the zoning code update or rewrite and the zoning map rewrite, which is also on the table. So, I mean, as a precursor to any of this, and granted with the pandemic, we should table all this for 2 years and use that $250,000 to help our small businesses and our residents in their time of need. But if we're gonna actually do this, we need to have an open process that involves the residents and considers what makes Vienna special as a precursor and not rely on a consultant to do that. Now, as for updates to the code itself, supposedly there's a few places where it's out of sync with the state law, and we have a good town attorney, and he can make a list of those, and we could start there.
That's great. Thank you. Andrea?
Thank you, Doug. Given all that's taking place today, I don't think now is the time to spend $250,000 or have the town spend $250,000 to hire a company to rewrite our residential and commercial zoning. My concern is if we were to go forward with this is how would we differentiate our town ultimately from the rest of the Northern Virginia sprawl if this consulting firm that we hire benchmarks best practices off of high density neighboring communities? What is right for other communities may not necessarily be good for the town of Vienna. I think that it would be beneficial for the town to clarify certain aspects of commercial zoning to make it easier for businesses to relocate here, but in an effort to promote common sense commercial redevelopment and without rewriting any sort of residential zoning.
Okay, thank you. Chris, you're up.
Thanks, Doug. Yeah, I'm going to echo some of the comments that we've heard here. And that's, again, is $250,000 from what I understand it to be worth the spend right now, given where we are to revamp a code. Now, I understand the code is, I think it's 60 years old, so it probably needs to be reviewed. There's probably some clarifying language we should put in there to make it easier to read. But I also want to ask, what problem are we trying to solve outside of that? I think we should make the code easier to read, easier to understand, updated for the times, but we also have to understand why we're doing it, what problem we're trying to solve first. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Roy, your thoughts on this?
Well, in terms of commercial development and zoning, I think my experience as being on the Board of Architectural Review for 14 years will certainly stand me in good stead. I'm currently the chair of the Board of Architectural Review, and we deal with the Maple Avenue Corridor ordinance and all the zoning ordinances of the commercial and multifamily residential parts of the town every meeting. But in broader terms, I think that there are certainly people in the town who want to have greater density, not only in commercial, but also in residential development. I push back against that. I think that we in the town have to understand it's our town, and we have the right to have a Vienna that we like, while respecting the rights of others. I think that has to be a lot more citizen input before we make any material changes to our zoning ordinances.
Okay, thank you. Chuck Anderson.
Thanks. I agree that we should be going slow on any redrafting of the zoning laws. And I also agree with Chris that we first need to figure out what it is we really want. We're coming up again to another cycle on redrafting the comp plan. I think the important thing is to get the comp plan down first before we consider rezoning. The current comp plan, for example, has a big section on MAC, which obviously is obsolete and will have to be taken out. And that will give us the kind of overall vision, I believe, that we can use in going forward. The one thing I learned when I was on the Planning Commission is you do not want to attack zoning on an ad hoc issue by issue basis, because as soon as you push down one problem, pops up. It's complicated, and it's going to require a lot of citizen time, and I'm one of those people who gives that time.
Thank you, Chuck. So the last comment is going to come from Andrea. Andrea, you've got a minute.
Thank you. I think we need to table redrafting of the zoning. And I also know that that residential lot coverage has been a big topic as well. And currently the Vienna's restricted to 25% with 25% residential lot coverage. When the town council adopted the 25% residential lot coverage restriction back in 1969, I believe that their plan was well thought out, and they passed it in an effort to preserve Vienna's small town appeal and to differentiate Vienna from Fairfax County and other surrounding areas that have no lot coverage restrictions. With regards to residential lot coverage, I feel that increasing the lot coverage restrictions would negatively impact green space in our residential neighborhoods. And with regards to residential rezoning, I don't think we need to touch that at all.
Okay, thank you. Our next question is going to be our fifth question. We're going to start off with Ed Summers. Okay, Ed, the Town Conservation and Sustainability Commission and town staff, in conjunction with a paid consultant paid by the town, did an extensive greenhouse gas emission study or carbon footprint over a year. How and when will you utilize this information, possibly in the next comprehensive plan, to create a more sustainable community?
Well, let me start by saying that I'm a strong environmentalist, and I think that future generations are going to look back and question a lot of the decisions that we have made recently and over the past 20, 30 years as they judge where we are in the future in terms of greenhouse gas emissions. I'm not an expert on the specific proposal that's been proffered. I'll say that in general, I think there are things that we can do as a town to make sure that we are more environmentally sustainable. And my inclination would be to try to support as many ideas as possible to do our part as a community, our part of as a member of the state and of the nation to reduce greenhouse gas emissions.
Thank you. We've got David. David, you're up next.
Well, you know, this issue came up in the context of the trees that were cut down behind the Wawa, and these trees were on town property. And one of the issues was, well, how do we prevent trees on town property from getting cut down? And that's part of keeping a sustainable Vienna. We are called the Tree City, and we need to adopt programs that take this kind of guidance and the guidance that was derived from the consultant in this context and implement them. Now, unfortunately, that plan never got voted on, but as a group, when we get to council, we will vote on a plan, a tree preservation plan, and we will also vote on a plan for the trees and green spaces around town to make sure that they're maintained and that the trees aren't cut down like they were behind the Wawa, which was terrible. Those trees were 60 years old, and maybe one of them might have been diseased, but the rest of them were just fine.
That's great. Thank you very much. Andrea, your thoughts?
The greenhouse gas emission study, I'm not actually familiar with, but as a resident of Vienna and someone who borders several homes that have recently been rebuilt, I experienced my two 175-year-old oak trees that I loved dying as a result of construction that's been taking place. And this is, I spoke with the town of Vienna arborist who came out to my property this past fall, and he said that this is nothing new. It's happening with all of the construction. It's happening all over town. We see our big old, we're a tree city, but we see our big old trees dying off. And I think we need to set some guidelines in place in terms with any sort of new construction to replace 2 trees for every tree that we lose, and to make a conscious effort to have more green space, more open space, and make our community more livable.
Thank you, Andrea. Chris?
Yeah, thanks, Doug. As I said earlier, I'm a father of 2 young boys, 10 and 6. I hope to be a grandfather one day. And the environment we leave to them is of the utmost importance to me. Trees are certainly an aspect of that. I think we need to, as Andrea said, plant 2 trees for every 1 that a developer knocks down. That's one aspect of it. Secondly, I think we need to get as many cars off the road as we possibly can. Vienna is a prime example of a small town outside of DC that could be much more pedestrian friendly than it is. And that's where I go into sidewalks. I want more and more sidewalks. I want to make it as pedestrian friendly. I want to have more access to businesses via the WNOD trail to encourage bike riding, to encourage walking. Secondly, recycling has become an issue in the town of Vienna. A lot of people recently learned that you couldn't recycle glass. I'd like to come up with some creative solutions as to how we can encourage and promote and accomplish more and more recycling in the town of Vienna, and I think we can lead the way on that.
Thank you. Roy, your thoughts on this?
Right. Well, first of all, unlike many reports that get issued to governments at all levels, I want to actually open it up and read it and follow the recommendations as much as we can. I want to treat these as golden because we pay for them. Basically, our greenhouse gases are too high and our carbon footprint is too large. We, like every other subdivision in the Commonwealth, need to make greater use of electric vehicles. We need to make it possible to have more solar panels on residential roofs and on the roofs of town buildings. All of these wonderful ideas, including more sidewalks, and I just want to say what a wonderful thing it's been that Maud Robinson gave us $8 million for sidewalks. We have to do all of these things. There's so much to do. Hopefully it will consume large amounts of our time going forward.
Thank you, Roy. Thoughts on it, Chuck?
So in my day job, I have the pleasure of learning about particular industries in a very short period of time, and then trying to appear as an expert on those industries. And over the years, I have looked very closely at biodiesel. I've looked at ethanol. I've looked at solar, and I've looked at wind power. And the one thing I've learned in these projects is that the greenhouse equation is a lot more complex than you would expect, and that the biggest contribution we can make to reducing greenhouse gases is not necessarily moving toward these other energy sources, but the biggest impact is reducing consumption and recycling as much locally. For example, solar panels almost all come from China, and they're made with polysilicon. Do you know what polysilicon requires? An intense amount of energy, which is typically obtained through coal-fired generators. So you have to be very careful and not jump on the quick.
Thank you, Chuck.
Of the day.
Thank you. Ray, your thoughts?
Yes, I would be very much in support of the emphasis on green space, but also the footprint would be reduced by having less dense development along Maple Avenue. I also believe that electric cars are coming, and that will be a big help. But I think that we can encourage, by the building of even additional sidewalks, people to walk and to go places by foot or by bike. This will help, particularly on the weekends, reduce our carbon footprint.
Okay, thank you. And now we're going back to Chris. You actually have the final word on this one.
Thanks, Doug. In addition to what I said earlier about making it more pedestrian friendly, making Vienna more pedestrian friendly, more sidewalks, more trees, I think this is an instance that I alluded to earlier, and that's we need to be looking outside of the town of Vienna. We need to see what other communities have done, not only in the DC metro, but across the country. How have they reduce their carbon footprint, and be active, reach out to them, communicate with them, take some really good ideas from other towns and cities that have had to reduce their carbon footprint and take on the challenge. That's what I would do. I've spent my whole career networking, building relationships. I think we need to take a really hard look at some of the best case examples across the country and apply them here.
That's great. Okay, so we're going to move on to our question number 6. Our first speaker is actually going to be David. And let me get you queued up as I read through that. Citizens of Vienna have concerns about aggressive motorists speeding, ignoring stop signs, etc. What are your solutions to this ongoing problem?
No, we have that problem right along Niblick and Hine. I can't let my kids, I have a 1-year-old at home, I have a 4-year-old at home, and I have a 6-year-old at home. And they can't go outside and ride their bicycles. And actually, we're probably gonna have to, sadly, we're gonna have to take them to a class at the community center and learn how to ride a bicycle, which is terrible because there's so much cut through traffic trying to avoid Maple Avenue. So my first thing would be to make sure that we keep this traffic on Maple. Now, the second thing for roads like Tapawingo and other roads that are that have significant cut through traffic, we need to put in speed bumps and speed humps, and we need to change the requirement from 75% of the people in that area voting yes to 25 voting no. And when we get elected with your help out there as a group, we're going to take care of that problem, and we're going to go area by area and take care of all of this cut through traffic with traffic calming measures.
Thank you. Okay, Andrea, you're up.
We have so much cut through traffic because of all the traffic on Maple Avenue. I think we need to be conscious in the future of overbuilding or continuing to overbuild on Maple Avenue, because Maple Avenue, as we know, is at maximum capacity in terms of traffic. So what happens is that traffic on Maple Avenue ends up spilling over into our neighborhoods and then making our neighborhoods unsafe for our kids and our pets and the wildlife. So I would address Maple Avenue first, and then ultimately with the spillover that we have on our side streets, we could do speed humps, install more of those, even take a look at doing some of the roundabout circles like what is in front of Lido's to help control traffic a little bit more. I also want to say that even the signs that they have are super helpful in terms of helping our neighbors. I was the one that put up the deer crossing signs on Beulah Road by the mulch yard.
Okay, Chris, your thoughts?
Yeah, this is an issue that's near and dear to me, and it's a large part of the reason why I'm running for town council. And I know I've said it probably too many times here, but I try and look at everything through the lens of my 10-year-old and my 6-year-old. I had a dear friend of mine, a neighbor, cite a study that roads that have sidewalks have traffic going an average of 10 miles an hour faster than roads without sidewalk. Frankly, I don't care about that study. I think the result of a 20-mile-an-hour car and a 30-mile-an-hour car hitting my child is going to probably be the same. So one of the first things I want to do is I want to put as many sidewalks in the town of Vienna as I possibly can. I agree with Dave. There are a lot of traffic calming measures that we can implement. Certainly speed humps. Again, other jurisdictions local to us didn't seem to have a problem putting in speed humps, and they work. They've been shown to work. They've been proven to work. But also, as you travel down, I believe it's Tapawingo, they have not a camera, but a radar meter there that it shows your speed and how fast you're going. And I will be the first to raise my hand that I'm guilty of going 27 and a 25. But
thank you, Chris.
That made me slow down, and I think those are effective measures.
Roy, your thoughts on this?
First of all, as far as Maple Avenue goes, in the non-rush hour times, speeding is a real problem. And I think that if this is an enforcement issue, I think if the police department enforces the limit on the broad expanse of Maple Avenue just as vigorously as everyone knows they do up by Westwood Country Club, I think the speeding is going to go down. As far as residential streets, I live on Moore Avenue, which has a lot of traffic. And I know that we were successful in getting speed tables. I'd like more four-way stop signs, anything to get the traffic calmed down that way. I think the idea of the flashing speed signs is good. I think people, studies show people do tend to slow down, and it's part of a shaming sort of result. Roundabouts are killingly expensive. They cost hundreds of thousands of dollars, and I don't think we're going to be able to
Thank
afford
you,
them.
Roy.
I support four-way stop
Thank
signs.
you. Chuck, your thoughts?
So traffic is like water. It's going to find the path of least resistance. And so the answer to this is very simple. You have to control as much as you can the traffic flow on Maple Avenue. That is really the only way to solve the issue of cut-through traffic. There are certain, I think, streets in town that need to be looked at sort of separately for different issues, in particular Windover Avenue, which is an historically very narrow and kind of twisty street with no sidewalks whatsoever, and with very large historic trees planted right next to the road. I strongly support a 15-mile-hour speed limit on Windover Avenue, and that would be something I would look at very soon after elected.
Thank you. We've got Ray.
Yes, I would institute traffic calming measures. We witnessed a young person on a bike almost be hit by a car, so it's a real issue. Also would consider lowering the speed limit. I would have the traffic enforcement people make sure their presence is known, so keep people from speeding. The radar signs are very helpful. Not everyone follows them, but I think the four-way stop sign would be a real break on speeding on some of the key roads.
Okay, and then Ed, your comments on this.
Well, as chairman of our town's Transportation Safety Commission for many years, I'm actually very proud of a lot of things we've already done in the town to make it safer. We've pushed for a lot more sidewalks. We've put a roundabout in that not only makes it easier for cars to move through that intersection, but which reduces environmental pollution, but also makes it easier for people to cross the street, which is really a priority. So pedestrian safety to me is really what's key here. We put in these new traffic beacons that let people cross on Marshall Road. I think there's all kinds of innovative solutions that we can put in place. Bump outs, making sure that our crosswalks are narrow, making sure that our pedestrians have the priority, making sure that our bicycle riders have the priority. I think there's a lot of innovative solutions we've already put in place, and I want to model those solutions in more of Vienna.
That's great. Thank you. And then our final word comes back to Roy Baldwin. Roy?
I did want to mention a particular instance around the town, which I think is in grave need of traffic calming, and that's the stretch of the road in front of Vienna Elementary. When I was out getting petitions, signatures, I was told in no uncertain terms by a number of the parents who walk their children to and from school that the traffic on that street is way too fast. And I think that we could have the same kind of flashing lights that flash to remind you when the school children are going to be crossing the street, as we do in many other schools around the county. I think that's one where we ought to start.
Thank you. And let's see. So we're going to come up to question number 7. Andrea, you're actually going to lead off answering this.
Okay.
What do you feel has best prepared you to work with the other members of the town council if you are elected?
Well, Doug, I have 20 years of corporate experience, but the last 10 years I've been a full-time mom and a full-time volunteer. You name it, you name it, I probably volunteered for it. I have been a volunteer at both the Vienna Elementary School and Wolf Trap Elementary School PTAs. I've been on the board of the Council of Ministry at Epiphany Methodist Church and was involved in the closure of that church after 58 years being in this town. I was the co-chairperson for their last silent auction and holiday bazaar, and as part of that, I knocked on every door of every small business in the town of Vienna, soliciting some sort of donations to promote their business and to have for our silent auction. Our last silent auction raised $10,000, which all went to Cho, the food bank in Vienna.
Chris, what do you think?
My job for the last 20 years and my livelihood has depended upon me working with all different types of personalities to get things done, to see results. That is an attribute and a characteristic trait that I've developed and honed in for the last 20 years, and that's exactly what I would apply as I have to work with other council members here to get things done in Vienna. I've mentioned it before, but not only will I apply that to work with council members here in town of Vienna to get things done, but it needs to be applied more broadly outside of the town to work with other jurisdictions, understand best practices, and bring them to the town of Vienna to get things done.
Thank you. Roy?
Well, first of all, I know the town council members that are going to be part of the new council. I know Steve Potter and I know Dr. Patel. I worked hard to try to get them elected, and I was very happy that they have been elected. And I know Howard Springsteen, in one way or another, is going to be on that council, either as hopefully as our mayor, but if not, then he'll still be as a town council member. I think my years of experience on town boards and committees means that I know people in the town hall. I know the people on in the town government. When I go into town hall, people know who I am. It means that being a known quantity means that when I come up with an idea, I think it gets more credence. People tend to pay more attention to it than they otherwise might. Besides, I just know how things happen, how things work, how you can get things done. I think that's a vital sort of a trait to be able to bring to bear, especially in these coming times.
Thank you. Chuck.
So my day job requires me to be a dilettante, and I have to bring a number of different skills to bear in order to do the projects that we undertake, and it has to be done on a very short period of time. In 1992, 3 of my colleagues and I decided we would do a grand experiment and see if we could run our own consulting firm. And we've done this now for over 25 years. Using that team approach and employing different skills and not being afraid to do my own research in areas that I'm unfamiliar with, I think are very important. And that also joined with the fact that I do have a lot of experience on zoning matters and development matters because I was there for 8 years on the Planning Commission, including 2 years of chair.
Thank you. Ray?
Yes, I've served as a mediator on the 380 project with the homeowners. And when you mediate, you have to be able to work with people on all sides. As a CEO and as a pastor, I work with people from all different kinds of backgrounds, trying to resolve issues and get things done. But when you have an issue at hand, you have to listen, listen, and listen, and to take in all the approaches and then come to consensus and work together to solve it.
And Ed.
I think my experience serving as a member and chair of the town's Transportation Safety Commission has shown results. And it's shown that I have the ability to help build a consensus among people that come from very different points of view when we start a discussion, and we end up at a point where I think most people feel pretty good about what we've done. So there's a traffic circle in town now because of the work that our Transportation Safety Commission did. There are more safe crossings, flashing beacons because of the work that we did, working hand in hand and knowing how to work with town staff, knowing when to push them when the answer doesn't seem right, how to encourage them to seek new ideas. So I think I've got a lot of results to show from my work on transportation safety, and I'd like to broaden that experience to bring more to the town council.
And David.
Well, as an attorney, I have to work with different groups of people to accomplish a goal for my clients. And I do that every day. I assess risk, and I talk to engineers, I talk to business people, and I talk to people that are on the other side of issues when I was doing litigation. And so that's how, and you figure out a way to work with people who are adversarial to you, but still accomplish a goal. So that's one piece. The second piece is, in light of the pandemic, you know, I attended Stanford Medical School, worked for years in biological industries, and also was a graduate student, a visiting graduate student at the New York Met College of Public Health. So I have some public health background as well that will come in handy on the new council. Additionally, we're already working together as a group to advocate for residents. Pasha, Chris, and Andrea and myself are all working together, and we plan to help our residents this coming term if we're honored with your vote. And I've also worked with some of the other people on this panel, like Chuck and Roy, to help on the election last year.
Thank you, David. And so, Chuck, you actually have the final minute here where you could add some additional comments.
I think I'm going to give that a pass. It seems a bit inappropriate to sort of pump yourself up for another minute, so I pass.
Okay, we're going to move right into our closing statements. Each of the candidates will have 2 minutes to discuss their qualifications and whatever they'd like to discuss. So we're actually going to start off with with Chris. And Chris, you're up.
Okay, well, thanks, Doug. Thanks, NEVCA. Thanks, VBA. And thanks to the other candidates. This is an unprecedented forum. I'm sure it's making history here, unfortunately, for all the wrong reasons. I also want to say thank you to Vienna residents to take the time to view this. I think it's an important exercise ahead of every Vienna election. A couple of things I want to touch on just broadly in terms of my view for the town of Vienna. I'm not an advocate for large 4, 5, 6-story buildings, apartment, condo complexes up and down Maple Avenue. I don't think that fits the small town charm that a lot of us love and the reason why we're here. Secondarily, I've mentioned it before and I'll mention it again. Sidewalks are a key aspect as to why I'm running. I was attending a town council meeting a few weeks back, and I think one of our residents put it best. I mean, we can replace a tree. We will make every effort we can to work around trees when we put in sidewalks, but trees can be replaced. Young sons and daughters cannot be replaced. So sidewalks are a priority of mine. Secondly, we do need to work with other jurisdictions. We do need to bring best practices to the town of Vienna. I don't think that we're going to solve every problem we have in the confines of our town. And thirdly, something we didn't touch on is I think communication with the residents in the town can be improved. I've been in technology my entire career. I get a notification on my phone when I have a weather update through my weather app. There's no reason why the town of Vienna residents couldn't have a town of Vienna app where they get updates on big things as well as small things, leaf collection, trash day, Halloween parades. I think that, or public hearings at the town council. I think that we need to communicate with our residents better. It will give us the opportunity to receive more input from them and make the decisions that our residents want us to make.
Thank you, Chris.
On May 5th, I hope to see you vote. Thank you.
Roy, final statement.
All right, thank you. If you have gotten this far in the program, it means that you care about Vienna as much as any of us that are on screen right now. You've got to take care of yourself because you know, we are together, we are looking at over the next 2.5 months or so, a gulf that is as choppy as the Red Sea in the book of Exodus. And we don't have a Moses to part the water for us. So we have to get across that vast ocean. And I hope you take care of yourself and we see each other on the other side. I want to particularly encourage you to vote absentee by mail. I also want you to avoid slates if you can. I don't see the need for any group of people thinking that they can take over a majority of votes on the town council. I haven't heard the argument for it tonight. I don't think the argument can be made. The new town council is going to have to do more with less. I grew up in the Midwest, and I know how to get more out of less. We're going to have to do something about the new Maple Avenue ordinance. I think my votes on the Board of Architectural Review and my experience recommend me to that enterprise. We have to help each other out. I was particularly heartened to hear of Ray Brill's Savor Vienna. I think it's a great idea. I think that sort of ideas can be expanded and will need to be expanded so that we can all take care of each other as we get to the other side and we pick up the pieces and we move on into the future for a greater and a more human Vienna, all taking care of each other. I hope to see you on the other side.
Thank you, Roy. Chuck, final statement.
Thanks. In my opening statement, I talked about 4 qualities: experience, judgment, compassion, and commitment. I hope that during this debate, where I stand on these qualities has come clear. And if not, you may want to go to chuckforvienna.com, where there's a lot more detailed information. But in the time remaining, I'll just recap some of my background. I was a member of the executive committee for the Malcolm Windover Heights Civic Association for over 12 years. I was a member of the Windover Heights Board of Review for 10 years, member of the Planning Commission for 8 years, chairman of the Planning Commission for 2 years. With respect to judgment, I discovered and used the supermajority provision on rezoning. I uncovered the bait and switch on Marco Polo, but I then worked with the developer on a compromise solution. I've repeatedly pushed developers for more in planning commission sessions, and I've helped draft actual zoning provisions on lot shape factor, lot coverage, and tree replacement. With respect to compassion, I'm a longtime church member, an elder, a deacon, a senior high Sunday school teacher for over 20 years, and a regular cook for the homeless. In terms of commitment, I would ask you to look at the number of years that I have spent in volunteer service and also the level of research I do on my own time, cutting back on my own work. If these are the qualities of the type of people you want to run Vienna, then I believe that I'm a strong candidate and would be very grateful for your vote on May 5th. Thank you.
Ray?
Doug, thank you for holding this debate tonight. My thoughts go out to each of the candidates, their families, and to the people of town residents of Vienna. These are unusual, unprecedented times. We're all suffering in one way or the other, and I just hope that things get better for each of us. Just wanted to share a couple thoughts. I served on a planning commission for a city 5 times the size of Vienna, so I really understand how the process works and how developers interact with the city or town. I will work tirelessly to retain the small town feel and ambiance of this wonderful place. Also, I believe that integrity is very important in every aspect of the process. You have my word that I will be transparent and that I will listen and listen and listen to the town residents. They have a lot of wisdom to share. As you know, I said that I am a doer, and that is me. I would rather not talk, but do. When I was pastor of Wesley United Methodist Church, we had training for 12 churches on how to reach out to the community. They said, 4 weeks from now, come back with your best ideas. 4 weeks from now, they did, but our church was different. We came back with a plan. We had already implemented it, and instituted a coat drive, and we gave those coats to the homeless and those in need. That program is still ongoing and has served more than 2,000 people over the last few years. So my approach is one that we need to work hard, we need to work together, have a common vision, and we can do amazing things in these trying times. If you want to know more about what I stand for, go to brillforvienna.com. I would appreciate your vote. I look forward to working very hard on your behalf.
Ed?
Doug, first of all, I want to thank you for hosting this tonight, and I want to thank everyone who's taken the time to participate in the discussion as well as watch this discussion. As I stated at the beginning, I've spent my entire professional career being an advocate for local government, and I have a network of literally hundreds and hundreds of experts, elected officials, professional staff across the country to call on for advice, for new ideas. And I think that's going to be needed now more than ever in Vienna in these uncharted times that we're about to enter as a result of the COVID-19 crisis that we're going through, and we don't know how long that's going to last. If you vote for me, I'm going to prioritize pedestrian safety. It's what I've made, it's my passion. I want to see more sidewalks. I want to see more safe street crossings. I want to see it safer for cars, safer for bicycles, safer for our kids to move around town. And I have to say, growing up in the Midwest, I've seen, towns can either move one direction or another. They either progress or they regress. They very rarely stay the same. I'd like Vienna to progress, and I'd like it to do it in the right way. So I think that we can have a vibrant downtown that is appropriate to the size and the nature of our community. I'd like to see more business in downtown. I'd like to see more people walking downtown on 123. I'd like to get people out of their cars. I'd like to see more people spending their money in Vienna, not in the Mosaic District or in Tyson's Corner. So I'm for balance, I'm for progress, and I'd love to have your vote on May 5th or by absentee ballot.
Thank you. David?
The pandemic has thrust our small town into unprecedented times. We are having to homeschool our children while also keeping up with our full-time jobs, while also thinking about how to safely get groceries to make dinner, while also learning about friends and relatives falling ill. So I sincerely thank you for taking time to watch this debate. I first ask that you safely vote from home by requesting an absentee ballot. I have instructions clearly posted on davidforvienna.org about the different ways to vote absentee. Second, please use www.elections.virginia.gov, the Board of Elections website, to submit your absentee ballot request. Please don't use some third-party website that does not post a privacy policy or terms of service, that is harvesting your personal data for other uses without your consent or knowledge. Third, and most importantly, I ask that you return the ballot. Far too many voters request an absentee ballot and then they never vote. So please take that last step and return your ballot to make your vote count. I'm running with Pasha, Chris, and Andrea on a Pura resident platform that includes addressing the adverse impact of traffic, schools, and neighborhoods from giant Mac building projects on Maple Avenue, honestly examining traffic on Maple Avenue, and appreciating that Maple Avenue is at capacity and preventing further harm to the livability of our neighborhoods from cut-through traffic. I want to restore Buell Road Park and prioritize the purchase of land for parks. Finally, I also want to make certain that this rewrite, if it goes ahead, of our residential and commercial zoning code foisted upon our town without resident input does not give away what makes Vienna special. I humbly ask for your vote. Visit davidforvienna.org to learn more and vote for David Patariu, Pasha, Chris, and Andrea to keep Vienna special. Thank you.
Andrea.
Our nation and the world is going through a horrific time right now. I'm the type of person who chooses to look at things half full. The American people are strong and resilient. The people of Vienna are strong. I'm confident that when all of this is behind us, that we will learn from this and come back stronger as a result. I'd like to also talk about some of the things that differentiate me from my fellow town council candidates. First and foremost, I'm the only female and full-time mom with elementary school age children who's running for town council. I feel this is an advantage because I'm out in the community on a daily basis, usually in one of my many volunteer roles, watching, listening, and interacting with the residents of our town. I see firsthand that our schools are overcrowded and require trailers. I see that there's a 2-year wait list to get our children in SAC after school care and a 7-year wait list to join a community pool. I've experienced firsthand elementary school age children having to travel to fields in neighboring towns or attend late night practices because there's a shortage of fields in our town. I've experienced firsthand the challenge of trying to find space large enough to hold a monthly Girl Scout meeting for a troop of 20 girls. I see firsthand the strain that many of our local churches are under. While on the Council of Ministry Board at Epiphany Church, I experienced the heartbreak of having to close that church after 58 years in our town. I watched the domino effect of the church closure on the 2 thriving preschools that operate out of Epiphany and saw the frustration from the different scout troops when it appeared they would all need to find alternate places to meet. I watch our wildlife desperately trying to survive as their local habitats are destroyed. Because I recognize that the lack of open space, green space, and places for local groups to gather is current and growing problem, addressing this is my priority. Another differentiation is that I'm not a politician nor existing member of any of the town boards. This I also see as an advantage because I'm able to look at issues with an open mind and new perspective. I am indeed a fresh voice, fresh choice. For additional information, take a look at andreaforvienna.org or www.fvfc2020.org. Thank you for your time and good night.
Thank you, Andrea. I appreciate it. We just want to thank everyone for participating in this 2020 candidate forum. The Northeast Vienna Citizens Association and the Virginia Vienna Business Association want to thank you very much for participating. We do want to remind our neighbors that it is very important that they go onto the fairfaxcounty.gov/elections website. That'll provide that same link that actually David had mentioned. Go over and actually register to vote. We want everybody to participate this year, and we look forward to it. Again, thank you very much for participating, and I hope you have a good night. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Everyone.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Good night. Stay safe.
Thank you.